also in Don't Copy Europe, the family. Again, I quote, the New Road to Serfdom. Quote, the state has assumed control over functions that were once discharged within families, health, education, daycare, provision for the elderly. So it is perhaps no surprise that the family itself in Europe is in decline. Explain that one.
Very few babies. Demographers say you
have to give me draw the line from the growth of the welfare state to the plummeting of the birth rate.
I mean, it's not a simple line. The two things are not immediately sequential. There are other things going on. There's a whole bunch of reasons why the birth rate has been in decline, to do with the spread of contraception, women working. And some of these are very good things, and I don't want to oversimplify. It is striking, nonetheless, that the first generation raised with cradle-to-grave welfare, the first generation to be excused the traditional responsibilities of adulthood, was the first one also to give up on parenthood. When the state expands, it squeezes out the private sphere. There was a time not so very long ago when any adult seeing a child out of school in term time would have said, why aren't you in class? Now that's seen as the government's job. There was a time not so very long ago when we all had to look out for our elderly neighbours and make sure they were collecting their milk every morning. That is now seen as social services. The real problem with the growth of welfarism is not that it retards economic growth, although it does. I mean, of course, it makes the economy grow more slowly, that's true. But in a way, that is the least of our problems. The real malignancy is the way it frays the bonds that used to tie society together. It makes us less virtuous as individual citizens, and it infantilizes us. It makes us less likely to take on our responsibilities.
What Europeans most disdain in America is cultural conservatism. But I can't help noticing that values voters in the United States seem to be keeping up their numbers. Just as the United States is outbreeding Europe, so the Republicans are outbreeding the Democrats.
There's a happy thought. Yeah, you go along to the mega churches in the Bible Belt offend European tastes, but there are plenty of children in their Sunday schools.
And after the 2010 census figures come down, they will pick up those portions of the country will pick up seats in Congress.
But I think that there is a general point about optimism and creating, if you like, a philoprogenitive society, a society where people want to have babies. The only European country that is breeding at replacement levels is Albania. The only place in Europe where the population would be growing without immigration, or at least sustaining itself. Turkey, the same if you count Turkey as a European country. I used to go to Turkey when my kids were babies, and I discovered that it is a perfectly normal thing in Turkey for a passing stranger of either sex to grab a baby out of a pram and lift it up in the air and say, thanks be to God. Now that doesn't happen in London very often.
No.
And I can't help thinking that there is probably a connection, that in a society where
well, now, so what's the connection? You just named two countries. You're not suggesting that it's because Albania and Turkey have smaller welfare states?
Oh, well, they do. They have much, much smaller welfare states, and they have much more important families.
Well, and you have also just named the two Muslim countries in Europe.
Indeed, they are less secularized.
So, all right. So you're making a point about the welfare state or about religion or both?
Again, those two things are not completely separate. As the state grows, the private sphere shrinks, and part of the private sphere is the role of the churches.